We have landed a second interview.
Somehow.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone who happens to be listening to this. My name is Sean Chiplock. I also go online as the moniker Sonic Mega. It's like Sonic and Mega Man, my two favorite video game characters from yonder years as ye child. But I am a professional voice actor who you may have heard in games such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as Revali Teba in the Deku Tree, Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony as Monotaro in a second character I don't want to spoil, in Persona 5 as Mishima Yuki, which I suspect might be the focus of this particular interview, and at least a couple projects I can't talk about yet, but 2017's been a pretty good year to me, and 2018's starting to look like it's going to be a powerhouse of a lineup.
Gonna start things off, pretty basic here. Have you finished, with the focus games of this interview being Persona 5 and Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse?
I have... Okay, so this is the part where I lose fans, right off the bat, because as a game series, I'm not really the biggest fan of Shin Megami Tensei or Persona. And it's not because of the graphics, it's not because of the story, it's just because I personally am not a big fan of the fusion mechanics. I'm a person who loves to plan ahead. So when I play games like Etrian Odyssey, I really enjoy, seeing the skill tree ahead of time and being able to say, okay, so down the line, I'm going to want to focus in these skills. Or at least having established character archetype classes. Like with Demon Gaze, a lot of characters, they had specific classes, so I knew what their focus was going to be. With Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, unless you're using an online guide, which can arguably be said to defeat the purpose of the game, you're relying very heavily on... I don't really understand how the fusion mechanics work. All I know is that you take these monsters that have set skills that get unlocked as they level up, and you fuse them together to create new monsters who may not even have anything remotely close to the same skills as the two monsters you just gave up. So for example, I was working through Persona Q, and I remember I had a monster that was really good with linked elemental skills, and another monster that was really good with critical hits or status inflicting abilities. And the monster that they created when I fused them together was this monster that basically just did physical attacks with a high crit chance. It was a complete change of what my team composition had been made of. But it was kind of necessary because he was just a higher tier, higher level monster. But having to suddenly throw away this entire team composition that I'd made up was really, really frustrating for me. Especially because since most of them have their skills locked behind, question marks until you've unlocked them, for someone like me who's new to the series, I don't even know what I'm going to get until I've already invested all this time in leveling them up. So just the combination of that made it really not fun to play because I had no idea what I was doing half the time or if the monster that I made was going to be worth it. So I definitely watch playthroughs through YouTube channels like Johnny Awesome, who does an incredible job with his playthroughs of games like Yokai Watch and the Persona games.
Yeah, I'm friends with that guy, actually.
Yeah. I think he and I collaborated on something once.
I saw that. It was part of his SMT IV Apocalypse Let's Play.
There you go. Yes, that was quite fun. That was right around the time that I had the interview for Disneyland too, so that's why I remember it. But yeah, so I watched him, but I am not personally interested in the series.
See, I kind of like not knowing what you're gonna get. Well, that's just me, but I kind of like having a lot to micromanage and to kind of think about. And there is a randomness to it, but I think I kind of enjoy that randomness.
Yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks, and if it works for you, all the power to you. I'm not knocking on people who like Persona. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you like this series. It's just I know that I, as an individual, don't really care for it. I am definitely someone who likes to set a goal for themselves and then work towards it, knowing when they've made those milestones, so that when we get to the end and my team composition completely breaks the entire game, I can sit back and go, yeah, I did that. I successfully executed my plan.
So how did you find out about Persona 5? Because we heard from Xanthi Huynh that the process for getting roles in that game was pretty interesting.
Did she elaborate on how the process of getting the roles worked? Because
I assume it's different for everybody, but from what we gathered from her, basically she was kind of personally selected for the role.
Yes.
Because she had done work on like SMT IV Apocalypse.
That is true. See, so the most common way that things are cast in the voiceover industry is that they will send out auditions and they will cast the person who they feel is best for the role. However, there are cases in the industry where if a studio knows someone really well and they know their voice type really well, it saves them a lot of time if they can just tell the client, listen, we already know who we have in mind for this role, just go ahead and trust us. And if the client says sure, they will do what's called pre-casting or scout casting. In the amateur, you may have seen it in like amateur voiceover communities, like if the project creator casts themselves as a character, that's sort of an example of scout casting. But it was the same way for Persona 5. The company that was doing the directing, PCB Productions, has known me because I've worked for them previously on Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse and a couple other projects. And the director in charge of that game knew that I was really good with younger, innocent teenage roles. And so since I was a good fit for the role, they decided to reach out and just say, hey, we'd like to cast you as Mishima Yuki for this project. So it may come as a surprise to some people, like, wow, they really didn't hold auditions for like this major Persona game. They just went ahead and handed out roles. And yeah, if they're that confident about the performer's ability to do the role, it will absolutely happen, because the less time they have to spend on casting the game, the more time they can spend on either characters they're having a little more trouble casting or just getting into production and getting it done.
See, we're very intimate with kind of how Atlus as a company works, because we're very interested in the business side of things. Mm-hmm. So what we've kind of figured out is that Atlus is very, very secretive. Like, Persona 5 was on lockdown for a year when it comes to spoilers. Okay. So our assumption is that the reason why they're very secretive and why they would prefer to do, like, closed auditions like that is that they probably don't really trust, like, amateur voice actors or maybe just voice actors in general to, like, steal a script or something and leak it out there. Like, I'm not saying voice actors are untrustworthy or anything, but Atlus would rather not take the risk.
Yeah, there are plenty of companies who are protected. It's actually part of how the whole strike issue happened between the union and the game companies, is that we are already required to sign non-disclosure agreements as part of performing on projects. But despite the fact that we already made contractual agreements to keep our mouths shut, game companies would still withhold information about the name of the project, the actual name of our character, sometimes even the title of the game or the type of game it was. And so that was causing tension, because it's like, if we've already literally agreed to not talk about it, why are you still not providing us with this information? And it just boils down to companies being afraid that somebody will leak something, and that if they can't build hype the way that they want to build it, that it could hurt their profit margins.
See, that's interesting because... Yeah, go ahead.
Fake names for projects?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, to an extent, it's understandable. Like, for example, when Nintendo was casting for a certain project of theirs, they were using code names as well. All the characters were not named what their final names were. The project itself was not named after what the final project name was. And while I agree that knowing ahead of time would have helped with understanding the game atmosphere, like, oh, it's this kind of game, I know what they might be looking for in the performance, I do understand why they would want to keep it secret. However, after we were cast, they did tell us the name of the project so that we knew what we were working on. The issue with the union was that sometimes, even after being cast and even after working on the project, they wouldn't know what they were actually working on. That was where the issue was.
One thing I noticed about a lot of your voices, you voice a lot of, like, bombastic characters. Like,
any in particular that come to mind for you?
Ishimaru and Navarre.
Kiyotake Ishimaru and Navarre.
Like, I was under the impression that, like, that was your thing as a voice actor. Like, what roles did you play that would give them the idea that you would do Mishima?
Well, often actors will depend on their wheelhouse, which is the voice types that they can do really, really well to do most of their work. So, for example, my wheelhouse is the sarcastic jerk-ass characters like Rivali and Navarre, and I'm trying to think of another good example. I have to bring up my own resume here. who is another like jerk person? Let me see. So we have Riovelt from Hunter x Hunter. He's totally sarcastic. Monotaro is definitely a sarcastic jerk. So I play those character types really well because they're really cocky, confident, sometimes a little eccentric. I do really well with younger characters. Again, young male hero protagonists. There are people who are better at sounding younger, like Zach Aguilar or Kyle McCarley, especially Koi Dao, who's recently getting into the business. Bryce Pappenbrook was really good at playing young protagonists. But I still do well when they're like heroic, determined. I'm very good at having a confident, adventurous tone to my voice. And so that's just kind of, that played into roles like Navarre, who is a little bit sarcastic, also a little bit bombastic and adventurous. And it's just one of those cases where the more I play those roles, the better I get at playing those types of roles, as long as I do my studying and study actors who play similar roles. And then companies either know me because of those roles that I performed, or they don't know me, but then they like my reads because as you play certain character types over and over and over again, it's easier to recognize them in your audition sides, and then you've already kind of got a leg up in terms of understanding how would this character talk, what would their mannerisms be like, in general, how would they sound compared to other people in the same project.
So was it easy to kind of capture that nerdy essence in Mishima? Because we're obviously all pretty dorky here.
Well, Mishima was actually a good change in the character type, because prior to that, a lot of the younger characters I played were either like very, very loud and exaggerated, like Zenk from Fairy Fencer F, or they typically tend to be the more mischievous type. But Yuki Mishima, he's just someone who wants to be really supportive. He starts off the game like super tender and abused, and as he gets, more in line with the Phantom Thieves, he becomes more supportive. He breaks out of his shell and he wants to support them the best that he can. So it was good to just be able to play a more pure young teenager type instead of one of those villainous teenager types that I'm more well known for.
How much Navarre could you handle in a single session? Like, this goes for, in general, your louder, more energetic roles.
I think we did Navarre over the course of 2 sessions. I want
to
say it was either 1 or 2 would be the case. Because you have to remember, we only recorded for major scenes where the characters spoke. And so while the scenes go on for a long time, you're also dividing the screen time between 10, 14 different characters sometimes, usually a minimum of 5 to 7. So they may have 100 lines, but each of them only speaks like 10 to 15 times. And typically in a video game session, what happens is you'll just move from line to line. You'll do 1 or 2 takes, and if they need a third one, they'll let you know, but otherwise they'll take the one that they like and they'll move forward. I think in general, the expected range of video game lines is between 150 to 200 an hour. Yeah. So usually if you're doing fighting games, it might be lower, like maybe 75 to 100, but for video games where it's mostly conversational, it's between 150 and 200 lines per hour. So in a single 4-hour session, you can get close to 700, 800 lines done. And for most roles, that's enough to take care of the whole thing.
Do you have to get into a certain mentality when doing the voice of Navarre, or does the pompousness kind of come naturally?
Oh, I'm totally a method actor. So like when I did Gruda from East Memories of Celceta, Gruda is a very book smart, I'm holier than thou type of person. So I actually brought in my copy of Hyrule Historia and I held it open like I was Robin from Fire Emblem, and it kind of helped me put on this like overly sarcastic, knowledgeable mage type character, someone who's lanky but likes to put on a big show. With Navarre, I did a lot of gesticulations. With Rivali, I very, very often would like hold my arms behind my back like I was crisscrossing my own wings. Like he was, kind of like how a general would stand before his army with his hands behind his back. And I stood like I would be Rivali, like he was just kind of looking down at Link from his perch, just giving him commands because he's better than him. So I definitely try to get into that headspace. Another example, there was a character I played for this like anime style tower defense game who he kind of had like that Cowboy Bebop or trying to think of who's a good example. He had kind of like that greaser type, you know, cool boy aura to him. So whenever I would speak my lines, I would kind of like brush my hand through my hair like I was slicking my hair back because that helped give that 80s greaser vibe that I was going for.
We have one more, not even really a question about Navarre. Can you
Okay.
do the laugh for us?
Oh man, it's been a while. Wasn't it just kind of like a haughty laugh? Like,
Yeah, he's basically like, oh, ha, ha, ha!
yeah. So, of course I knew that we would destroy that giant worm. You have the great Navarre with you.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
So, back to Mishima. What's your favorite thing about Mishima?
I like that he develops as a character emotionally. He's not just sad and beaten up the entire time. He actually starts out the game as very timid and very closed off to the rest of the world. And as he comes to trust the Phantom Thieves, he turns from someone who has no outlook on life to someone who's very determined, very focused. I really liked that once he was able to start shining, he actually took on a role and he became not aggressive in a negative way, but he was aggressive in his pursuits and aggressive in how he ran the the fan site. And it was cool to see him get to be the person he wanted to be once what was holding him back was out of the way.
See, I like Mishima quite a lot because I think he's a really cool concept in a way, because he's kind of like our link to the Phantom Thieves. Like, Mishima is the everyman and the fanboy who just thinks that the Phantom Thieves are so cool. And, like, that's us, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's easy for someone to identify with. He's the guy who wants the Phantom Thieves to succeed, and it kind of compels you to feel the same way. Because he's being so enthusiastic about it, and he's working so hard, and you want to see Mishima be a happy boy.
Do you have a favorite Mishima moment?
Mishima moment. You know, okay, this is kind of important both personally and professionally, but I have often gone back to his rank 10 scene when he's talking with the protagonist on the park bench, because not only do I feel like that was one of my best subdued performances, because I'm typically really good at playing characters who are exaggerated or hyper, but I don't often get to play characters that are very subdued and realistic and heartfelt, and I feel like I did a really, really, really good job with that scene. But it's also cool just seeing him like have that moment of realization, that moment of really just brotherly communication with the protagonist. So for many reasons, I really, really like his rank 10 scene.
Yeah, you were so good as Mishima. I don't think we've said that yet, but you did a great job, and as Navarre. Like, Navarre is actually one of my favorite SMT characters because of your performance.
Navarre I was really worried about because I know that Liam originally voiced him in the base game.
Right.
And that the only reason why he wasn't returning was because he was busy with another project at the time. So I was really scared that people were going to be like, oh, well, I mean, I guess I understand why he had to be replaced, but Jesus, this new guy is terrible, and he doesn't sound anything like Liam does.
Honestly,
So,
I couldn't even tell that it was a different guy.
that I'm surprised about. I do think it's very obvious that he was different. I know that I kind of hammed it up a little bit more. But hey, if the client liked it, and especially if the fans, if the audience liked it, then it's not in my place to complain.
Mm-hmm.
Were Navarre's lines mostly the script, or did you, like, ad-lib a couple of his, like, lesser lines?
Typically, it's very, very rare that you'll ad-lib a line. Usually, they'll let you ad-lib a word or two if it fits in the context of the scene, but in most cases, the lines are as they're written. So, like, for example, when I perform as the Deku Tree in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, there's one line I like to point out where, for the localization, the line is something is, "Many have referred to me through the ages as." There's this really weird hitch in the dialogue, and it's not necessarily the fault of the localization team. It's just because it made sense in Japanese, but when it was localized, we had to match the lip flaps exactly. It wasn't like Kingdom Hearts, where the Kingdom Hearts people would actually do a second version of the character lips to match the English dub. So it's just one of those cases where sometimes we have to do weird things to make the line fit, but most of the time it's exactly as it was written. We just perform what's there on the page. I mean, there's times where we'll record a line and then they'll just decide that after actually hearing it performed, it doesn't really work very well. But most of the time, what you hear in the game is what was written on the script.
So what's it like being involved with the Persona community now? Because the Persona community is pretty interesting.
Well, my involvement with the Persona community hasn't been like super huge as of late. The most recent thing that happened is when I got involved with that Mishima fanzine that recently got sent out to the backers. And that's also kind of interesting because the only reason I found out about the fanzine was through a colleague of mine alerting me to it. But if they hadn't, I wouldn't have even known about its existence in the first place. So at the time that the game came out, it was really big. But I want to say it still wasn't too big just because Mishima he's still more of a plot important NPC. You can build your relationship with him, but he's not a romance option. He's not one of the main thieves. You know, he doesn't join you on most of the missions. He's important, but he's kind of like the top tier of unimportant characters, if that makes sense. So understandably, there wasn't as much of a focus on him as there was for the main cast.
So how did you end up getting into the voice acting scene?
Oh man. So I have a whole story written up about it, but the long and short of it is that what really attracted me to voiceover was the first time that I discovered that it was a thing that people did, because I had been browsing the Adult Swim website, and if any of you remember like those MTV behind the music video things where they would like show music videos with little factoid pop-ups, Adult Swim had something like that for one of their upcoming episodes of Trinity Blood. And one of the pop-ups, when I clicked it, took me to like a little sneak peek of the recording process for the episode. And that's when I saw Troy Baker in the studio as Abel Nightroad doing lines. And it was that moment of like watching this actor talk at the same time that the character's lips were moving and realizing that they weren't adding any special effects. It was just a dude performing as this character using his voice. And that's what really clued me into the fact that it was a thing that people did. At the time, my reasons for doing it were perhaps a little more juvenile. I just liked the idea that I could be rambunctious and loud and have people pay me for it. But nowadays, it's a little bit more I mean, I still like that I get to go totally ham sometimes, but it's also my chance to go on adventures that aren't possible in the human world or aren't possible in real life. I really, really like, as you said, getting the chance to interact with communities. I can't count the number of times that I've just been able to surprise someone who was holding like a Breath of the Wild event and just pop in, or sign people's merchandise and talk to them about the game. I really enjoy that aspect. And then kind of on a existential front, it's bittersweet to think about how it's my way of lasting beyond my lifespan, in that even after I'm gone, if someone, you know, puts in a certain game or project that I voiced for, I can be right there to entertain them again. It's not like I ever left. So it's nice to think about. It's my way of having lasting power, so to speak.
Do you have any pro tips for up-and-coming future voice actors?
Oh man. I actually wrote an entire PowerPoint on this, which I'm trying to pitch to conventions as a reason to bring me on. If I just had to pick a couple base tips, it's often said half seriously that if you'd rather be doing anything else, go do that instead. And it's true, because voiceover is a daily routine. There is not a holiday from voiceover except when companies are literally on holiday. But every single day I am waking up and checking stuff for auditions, and even if I don't feel in the mood to record, I have to push myself to do it, because the only way I will have a chance at booking a gig is if I audition for it, or if I get myself in front of the studio so that they keep me in mind for when certain characters come up. It's all self-driven. You have to push yourself to improve. You have to push yourself to update your demos. If you're not willing to make it a day-by-day life commitment, then just go do something else, seriously. But yeah, for people who want to know more, I have a 2-hour presentation that I've written called I'm Not Crazy, Only 5 of Me Are, that goes deep into the heart of doing freelance and studio voiceover, and that I would recommend for anyone who wants to get into voiceover. So if you're into that, you should look into having me invited to your conventions, and the details on how to get me invited are on my Twitter at Sonic Mega. So check it out, or send me a DM and I'd be happy to talk to you.
I'll tell you what, man. I'll see if my local anime convention can get you to come over here in New Orleans.
It's pretty simple. Like, I don't charge exorbitant fees. I've got lots of panels to offer, so it's not like they have to like try and find ways for me to contribute. It's really just a matter of reaching out to my booking agency and saying we'd like to have Sean show up. I would love to show up. The only thing that keeps me back is travel costs, because if I fly out for a convention, it's on my own dime. Then not only am I paying to go there, and probably not having any panels to do, but that also means I'm away from home and not recording for projects. So it's just one of those cases where it's much, much, much easier for me to make the time if I can treat it as a business event, because if I'm going out there on official business, then it makes sense.
Right. Like, that's why I don't, like, some people will get kind of remiss when voice actors, like, charge money for their autograph. But, like...
Okay. Part of that, well, I'll let you go ahead and finish first.
Yeah, like, they gotta understand that not only are they probably on their own dime paying for a flight out there, but every moment that they're at that convention, they're losing possible work that they could be doing instead.
I mean, many of them will be paid an appearance fee. Like, I charge a flat $500 appearance fee for conventions, because typically $500 is about what I get paid for like a 2-hour video game session if I booked it. But since I'm obviously not working every single day, it's like, okay, $500 plus, stipends for food over the course of a weekend. That's fair. That's about what I'd miss otherwise. Most actors who charge for autographs do so because it costs a lot of money to print off the prints. They're either paying artists for the commissions, they're paying money for FedEx or whatever they use Vistaprint to print them off. Like, FedEx is probably more expensive than Vistaprint, but when I printed off, I think 100 copies of my character roster print, that was $70, $80.
Wow.
And it's also because most actors, they make money, but they don't make a crap ton because we don't work as often as you think. Like you said, you think about the fact that I voiced, Mishima Yuki in Persona 5, which was a huge, huge game. Mishima was done in about 2 to 3 4-hour sessions. So for a video game, $200 an hour, 4 hours, I want to say I made, and this is like a generous amount, I want to say I made about $1,500 to $2,000 off of that gig. But that was before taxes were taken out. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't get paid residuals off of that game. It's not like a commercial advertisement where I get like $15,000 off of the licensing for, a 5-week commercial in Chicago. So in the grand scheme of things, for how much the game made, I didn't get paid all that much as Mishima Yuki, but I have to constantly be booking gigs if I'm going to make any sort of money. So what I'm getting at is a lot of actors, they play these nice roles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to pay off their rent for the year. A lot of them still have to make rent. They still have to make off their car payments, and that's why they charge us to help make ends meet. Me personally, I don't charge people for prints simply because if I look at it 2 ways, 3 ways. One is if I'm concerned about people turning around and reselling it on eBay, then it's just as simple as wanting a name to make it out to. Because if I say, if I make it out to Scott, well, then the only people who are going to be able to buy it on eBay
are Scots, yeah.
Scots. So, and honestly, at that point, if you're able to successfully resell it to someone specifically named Scott, good job, dude. Like you
more power to you.
Scott trade.
Reason number 2, like I said, would be if they needed help making ends meet or paying off printing costs. And I'm kind of in a position where I'm not really financially struggling. Like, just being completely honest. If something bad were to happen to me, I could probably pay it off. Like, if my car were to completely break down, I could afford to get a replacement or a junker car and just get on with my life without being in dire financial straits. So to me, it doesn't feel fair to charge people for prints when I'm not really hurting for money in the first place. And the third reason is because it's always better to just offer a chance for people to donate. Like, I'll tell people, hey, I'm not going to charge you to take this print, but if you want to make a donation that will help me afford more prints in the future, I will gladly accept it. I figure it's just easier to be upfront and give people the option to donate, because then if they want to, it's out of personal choice and not feeling obligated to.
See, I have a lot of respect for voice actors and artists in general, because at the end of the day, y'all really are artists. You're selling your talent.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine it's like kind of a rough thing to do, like the same as being a musician or like a practical artist, is that you gotta sell your craft, and if
It's
people don't
also
want to
really
buy your
hard
craft,
because
yeah,
we almost never find out why we didn't get a gig. Like, if we don't get cast, I auditioned for a lead role of an anime project recently, and I didn't get it. But I don't know whether it was because I actually sent a really good audition, but they just happened to like someone else who sent in better. Or maybe I actually had the best audition, but my voice wasn't exactly what the client had in mind. There are cases where someone auditions and maybe they're not the best in terms of acting ability, but they sound precisely like how the creator envisioned the character sounding. Or maybe it was a case where my audition was really off spec and I didn't actually match what the client was looking for. I don't know. And you can't let that sort of thing eat at you, because it will gnaw at you and cause you paranoia. It's really stressful. But like I said, we have to power through that as actors and just focus on doing our jobs to the best of our ability and not worrying about the jobs we don't get. I just focus instead on doing the best job I can on the jobs I do get, because if I have I look at it this way. It's kind of an adaptation of a quote that I remember from Will Smith, which was, no one goes out expecting to build a wall. He just tells himself, I'm going to lay this single brick as perfectly as I can. And over time, I'll step back and I'll find out that all these bricks came together to make a wall. So my focus is, whenever I do book a role, I want to do a really, really good job on that role, so that, as time goes by and my portfolio grows, sooner or later, I will have this really long portfolio full of really well done roles that I can use as a billboard to advertise myself going forward.
Like, one of the things that kind of surprised me about Persona 5 when all the voice actors for the English dub got revealed is that there are a lot of new faces. Yeah. And I love that, because, like, eventually, like, not to knock the classics, but you can only hear certain people doing pretty similar voices so long before you start to think, oh, it's this voice actor again.
But see, that's a topic of hot debate, because what that essentially does is it punishes people for being really good at a certain voice type. Like, for the reason why Johnny Young Bosch worked so often as far as 5 to 10 years ago was because a lot of anime had really confident, cocky character types. Code Geass, the lead character, Lelouch, was a very strategic person who was also a bit cocky because of his power. Bleach had Ichigo Kurosaki, who was a very confident, cocky teenager who was aware of his power. So there was a lot of this character archetype that Johnny Young Bosch could play exceptionally well, and that's why he kept getting cast in these characters. Bryce Papenbrook recently had a case where he was voicing a lot of lead roles because he could voice the young coming of age teenager who had to scream a lot. And now you can see that in Kyle McCarley. Kyle McCarley is landing all kinds of roles that involve the same type of voice that Bryce Papenbrook used to do. So it's kind of, to me, it's a little unfair to say, oh, it's so-and-so again, because all I really care about is their acting ability. Like, how well do they embody that character? If the voice fits, the voice fits. It doesn't matter that it's the same person playing it. If a fresh blood comes around who also fits that voice type and they do a better job, then by all means cast them. It's different than saying, if they completely ignore new talent because they have this established talent that they just want to go with. That I agree. There's a certain point where you should let new talent have a chance to show their stuff and see if they're good enough. But as far as who actually gets cast at the end of the day, all I care about is that the best person for the role gets cast, whoever that happens to be. I'll put it this way. I know that I'm really good at playing cocky, sarcastic asshole characters. And as long as I can see for the foreseeable future, if I'm the best fit for a cocky, sarcastic asshole character, I want to keep playing them because I know I do them well, and that's going to get me booked.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you have any concerns about, like, maybe someday ending up kind of typecast as that guy who's good at being pompous asshole character? But that doesn't bother you?
There are people who call it typecasting, and there are people who call it the wheelhouse. My mentor just yesterday, he said, when he first started out, all companies wanted, or all his agencies wanted to send him, was audition sides for young black teens, even though he could play a much wider range of characters. And even though he was good at playing young black teens, he didn't necessarily want to always play young black teens. So what he did, instead of saying, oh, well, I'm not going to take these roles because I don't want to play them, is he became so good at playing the roles that companies thought he was just the best at, that he became very, very trusted by those companies. And because he was so well trusted, when he would get sides that included characters that he also thought he'd be good at, he would say, hey, can I go ahead and read for this character too? And that was how he got to show off more of his range to these companies, who then went, oh, crap, he's capable of doing these types too. So even if I'm getting typecast for certain characters, that's good, because it means I can continue playing this character that companies really trust me as, and somewhere down the line, I can expect that there will be opportunities to read for other character archetypes. So it's really only a limiting factor if you treat it as one, if you don't look for those opportunities to expand through what you've accomplished so far. People really liked what I did as Revali and Teba in Breath of the Wild. They say Revali is like one of the best performances in the game. But what most people don't know is that originally I was only cast as the Deku Tree. And the only reason I tried out for the Deku Tree is because I said, you know what? I picked 2 character types for these auditions. I want to do one that's a real contrast. It's a really big change that'll catch them off guard. And that's exactly what happened, is it caught the client off guard. It was like, whoa, this is the same person? And so originally all I had was the Deku Tree, but in the process of recording for Breath of the Wild, something happened to where they were taking auditions for Revali again. And since I was in the studio, they said, do you want to do reads? So had I not gone for that, out of the box, I may not have had the chance to audition that character in the first place. But it was because they trusted me to be able to play that character type that I got to read for Revali. And after I got Revali, they said, hey, you did really well with these 2 roles. We trust you. Are you able to do a different voice for this 3rd character, Teba? And I said, let's see. And I tried, and they trusted me, and they said, yeah, that's good. And that's how I got it. So again, it's just building blocks. It's building that sense of trust and camaraderie, and also training yourself on the side so that when the opportunity presents itself to record for characters, you know what to do.
How difficult is it to kind of break into the scene? Because I'd imagine that's one of the hardest parts, is just getting noticed and getting that work to begin with.
It varies wildly, because everyone's path into the industry is different. Some people get in because they have colleagues who they're good friends with, who are working on a project, and they just suggest them to the client. Some people get in the industry just by going to workshops. Like I started relationships with Mattel and Disney Parks by going to workshops and performing live in front of the casting directors and impressing them. It really ranges. Some people join the union by getting involved in a YouTube project that has union actors. That's how they get union eligibility. So it very widely ranges. And that's why it's impossible to say, or to answer the question, how do I become a voice actor? People's best bet is to just do their research online and figure out the foundations of being a successful actor, which often parallel with the foundations of being a successful person in general, and then just letting time and opportunity open doors for you. The common saying is opportunity plus preparation equals success. So it's just constantly learning, putting in the time on your own time to educate and practice and improve yourself. And then once the chance opens up, you'll be ready to seize it and make the most of it.
So for our last section here, we've got some questions from Twitter. I picked out some of the least awful ones for you.
Twitter or 4chan? Because I saw you guys...
Twitter.
Okay.
I also want to throw in one of the joke questions I like to throw at Xanthi. Which of your characters is the least likely to swear? And can you do that as that character?
Oh man. Wasn't there a hashtag that was like hashtag let Mishima say fuck at one point?
No, I think that's Ryuji, because Ryuji's always like, this effing sucks,
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Least likely to swear out of all my characters. Let me look through. Kimujin, Twiggy Slims, Monotaro. Oh, it would totally be Kiyotaka Ishimaru.
Yeah, that's part of his character.
Kiyotaka Ishimaru is definitely the hallmark of someone who follows all of the school rules, and he's not gonna put up with your shit. Put up with your Shenanigans! Ha ha! You thought I was gonna say shit, weren't you?
Alright, that's good. That is exactly what I wanted.
So a second ago you mentioned 4chan. That's kind of spooky.
What do you mean?
Did you see that post? Because that wasn't me. That was actually my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably look it up right now. If I go Chiplock, 4chan on Google, and then search for past week, date, hold on, past month. Yeah, here we go. In under video games for Shin Megami Tensei, posted on November 15th, my friend scored an interview with Sean Chiplock,
That was
the guy
him.
that voiced Navarre and IBA Mishima in Persona 5. Any question ideas? Ask him what his favorite demon is. Favorite demon. I don't really know. I wish I hadn't answered that question, but I haven't played the game enough to really care. Ask him about green butts. Get out of my swamp! Ask him how it feels to be a bitch.
Damn.
Well, Anon, whenever I need pointers, I just ask your mom.
Damn.
Ask him which role he liked more and if there's any notable differences between being a VA in Persona and mainline. There wasn't really major differences in terms of the games. I want to say that just in general, Shin Megami Tensei takes itself more seriously, but then again, I also voiced the character who doesn't take himself all that seriously. So I would say of the two, I liked Mishima more. I really did, because it was a nice way to show off that I can play more down-to-earth characters as well. For insider information regarding the rumored unreleased Debbie-sama translation, I have no idea what the hell
I don't know what that is either.
So yeah, it's not too hard to once Google caches these old threads, it's not too difficult to find myself if people have mentioned me by my name.
So you're just on that 4chan patrol.
I troll from time to time. I would get involved if the threads weren't archived by the time I find them.
Right.
But
see, I don't like that. I get spooked when people mention my username.
I mean, I'm a public voice actor.
Yeah,
People are gonna know about me.
So these are the not horrible Twitter questions we wanted to ask. Are you afraid of ghosts?
Am I afraid of ghosts? I'm not afraid of ghosts, but I am terrified of doors at the end of very long hallways that are dark.
That's a very specific fear.
Because when I was young at our old house that we live in Maryland, when I would go up the stairs and turn left, there was behind me was my parents' bedroom, and then to the left was my room, to the right was the guest room, to the left at the end of the hall was my brother's room, but at the very end of the hall, like at the wall facing me, was the closet door. And so as soon as you turned left, there's this door just staring you in the face, and you don't know what's in it or what could be in it. And so I often would not even look up at the wall. I would just turn the corner around the top of the stairs and go straight into my room.
Right, the devil could be in there for all you know.
Yeah, I know, or a redead. I've played enough Ocarina of Time. I know where those things are.
A guy with Wi-Fi wants to know, if Navarre and Mishima had a fight to the death, who would win?
Well, what is the goal, to not die or to die? When you say a fight to the death, are they fighting to die or not to die?
Okay, well, how's about I rephrase this? The goal is to make the other one not exist anymore.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, it's difficult because based on the start of Persona 5, Mishima's already been dead for years. Or dead inside for years. To make them not exist. I would say Mishima would probably win, because Navarre obviously is good at being a spirit. Well, actually, no, that's a good question. Because, like, Navarre is the kind of spirit that wouldn't go away until, like, his needs were met. And even when his needs were met, he said, no, I want to hang around with you for a little bit longer. But Mishima has the Phantom Thieves, and he's one of those people who, like, would have unwavering dedication, and, like, that kind of spirit would bring him back from the dead, as we've seen in certain elements of the Persona series. So, of the two, I would say... This is difficult. I would say Mishima would win, simply because there are gods in the Persona or the Shin Megami Tensei universe that are capable of making things just stop existing. Whereas they don't really exist in the Persona. Persona's more of the high school social link element. So I would say, just given the economics and the operation mechanics of their world, Mishima is in a better position to survive the concept of ceasing to exist. So I give it to Mishima.
I don't know if you've heard of the Versus Battle wiki, but it's this wiki that, like, lists as many characters as possible and puts them on a tier. And Navarre is in tier 1, which makes him stronger than Goku and most versions of Superman.
What?
Yeah,
How does that work?
because Navarre, like, it has this really warped kind of perception of, like, power, because Navarre in the party beat, like, literally God. And so
That's true.
the logic is that through, like, that, Navarre must... Right, through his contribution, he must be, like, a fifth-dimensional entity
That's actually true. That is true. Mishima does run the fan site that allows people to support, but he doesn't actually contribute any direct skills, whereas, as you said, Navarre is not only one of the strongest party members in terms of his buff on the team, but you do take down God with Navarre at your side. So, yeah, that's actually a very good... That's a good counter-argument.
Does bring you back from non-existent at the end.
That is true.
Persona 5.
It is true.
So, how is working with Atlas in the voice team? Any stories?
Okay, so another thing most people don't realize is that despite working with all these different companies, usually the method of recording doesn't change all that often. Most often what happens is I will go to a recording studio with like PCB Productions or Formosa or wherever it happens to be. And the only thing that really changes is what company the representatives for the client are. So when I worked on Maple Story, which I got to talk about, which was at PCB Productions, that was being hosted by Nexon. So I had my sound director, the sound engineer, who I've known from past projects, and 1 to 2 representatives from Nexon. When I was recording for Persona 5, it was my director, my sound engineer, who I knew, and 1 or 2 representatives from Atlas. So all that, even with Nintendo, it wasn't at Nintendo's HQ. I didn't get like the grand tour and shake hands with Reggie Fils-Aimé. It was just, oh, I'm recording at the studio, but there's 1 or 2 people from Nintendo to make sure that the character's being done right. So it's a lot less a lot more anticlimactic than people think.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's more business than necessarily like a really fun, neat experience a lot of the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Screwy wants to know, is Navarre the best boy?
Is Navarre best boy? Well, he must be. If he were, he'd have to be the best boy, because he's definitely not much of a man.
Right.
But,
God damn.
No, I think... Who's the guy in the yellow tracksuit who's also, like, half demon?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. He's best boy.
Here's Sage Freak, and I don't know why I feel this one down. How does it feel being the voice of the sexiest Megami Tensei character of all time? You're calling which one that is.
What do you mean? Rivali's not in Shin Megami Tensei. Wait, are they saying Navarre is the sexiest? Or
I have no idea.
Mishima Yuki. Oh,
it could be either of them.
I don't know. Mishima's precious. Mishima's innocent. He's not sexy. He's innocent. Don't lewd the moon moe.
There's a tagline for the interview.
Don't lewd the moon moe.
There you go.
Those are words to live by. I think that's about it. Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for making the time to interview me.
No problem. We enjoyed it a lot. So if people want to catch up with what's going on with you, how can they do that? You got Twitter?
All right. If you want to follow me for life posts, follow my Facebook, which is Sean Chiplock, SeanChiplock. If you want to follow me for funny stuff that I find and my announcements regarding my voiceover career, you want to follow my Twitter, which is @SonicMega, SonicMega. And if you just want to follow me for shit posts and dumb audio skits, then you'll want to follow my Tumblr, also under the name Sonic Mega.